Just what we like.
Sorry, I started the call and then I got up to turn off the AC, which is very loud, and then my mic was off. Also, I was, just resentfully leaving it off.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. It was, my sister was trying to get me, I don't know why anyone would, it shows the depths at which of desperation to which she had fallen. She wanted to help me set her mic up, which I failed miserably at. Because it was that one that,
by the way,
do you remember when I tried changing my mic setup? I actually bought one and we tried it and it was incredibly bad.
Yes.
It was that one, because I was like, surely it was just me fucking up. It wasn't the mic, but I really cannot make it work. I think it might, because you're always like, it must be me being a moron.
Well.
But I think it might just be broken.
Could be. All right, folks, welcome to another edition of Heavy Hands. I'm your host, Connor Rebush. With me, as always, is Phil McKenzie. Phil, you have assured me repeatedly that my audio sounds okay. I don't believe you. I don't know if it's because you're my friend, and I think you might try to protect my feelings, or if it's because you're English, and therefore inherently genetically, distrustful. But, I'm in a new apartment.
I mean,
it's echoey. There's cicadas. Yeah, go on.
Haven't we established that I'm the master of audio quality issues? I can't believe you wouldn't trust me.
Yeah.
Phil, he sounds so great. Is, I think, pretty much the feedback that we get all the time.
I see that YouTube comment constantly. God, where can I get Phil's mic? Who is Phil's audio engineer? Surely he must pay somebody. Somebody must contract to produce this quality. Well, anyway, folks, you may hear some wrinkles in audio quality. Last week we had the glorious mono edition. I don't know that made any difference, actually, even though I talked about it a lot, because I think we export to mono all the time anyway. This time you will be dealing with, and possibly forever, dealing with the sound of my new apartment, with its high ceilings and its nearby window, with vines and trees festooned with seasonal cicadas, and the AC unit that I had to turn off. And so by the end of this episode, Phil, if I start to sound sweaty, more than usual anyway, that's the explanation.
Listen to Fancy Connor trying to insert ways of bragging about his apartment. Oh, it's got high ceilings and vines and exciting local wildlife like a giant swarm of insects. And air conditioning.
Oh, it's sweltering. Ooh, it's very humid. It's like a Midwestern rainforest. La-di-da. Yes, well, sorry. I don't mean to be too highfalutin. Should we get into our discussion of MMA? We've got a big card this week. UFC 263, that's right. 3 times this weekend, Phil, I've typed in UFC 236 and been very confused by what I saw. Israel Adesanya is a big card, kind of a weird one. And here you're about to find out why. Israel Adesanya rematching Marvin Vettori. Not necessarily a rematch anyone was clamoring for, though certainly justified, and in its own way, quite interesting. Then we've got Davison Figueretto versus Brandon Moreno. Definitely a rematch I think people were very happy to see, but also, again, one of a fight that wasn't like that competitive in terms of scoring. These were the initial versions of both of these, the main event and the co-main event, was competitive but not particularly close. I think that's sort of the description that suits them best. And then we have just a straight up mismatch. Leon Edwards versus Nate Diaz. Those are our 3 big fights for this card. A little weird, not uninteresting, but that will be comprising the bulk of this week's episode of Heavy Hands. We've also got on this card Damian Maia, perhaps being offered up as Bilal Muhammad's second ever TKO victim in the UFC. We've got Drew Dober versus Brad Riddell. I believe that is a rebooking, but that's a very exciting matchup. And we've got Movsar Evloev taking on Hakeem Dawodu, which is a matchup I don't necessarily understand, but I also do not dislike at all. So we're going to try and get into as much of that as we can. Some of that might end up as bonus episode material. By the way, let me say it now, since I did finally end up, I succeeded in releasing the marvelous Marvin Hagler commentaries that I did with our dearly departed Kyle McLaughlin, who no longer covers combat sports. He did bug me on Twitter about doing a Chocolatito Estrada 2 commentary. So hopefully that will be coming to the Patreon this month, or at least, Phil, it may be recorded this month and then it'll come out this year, you know? Maybe.
Ooh. Promises.
So, welcome to the episode. Welcome to the main event. Israel Adesanya, Marvin Vettori 2. What do we make of it, Phil?
This is as you mentioned, there's some merit to this. Obviously, probably Robert Whittaker has put together probably more than enough at this point to justify himself getting another crack at UFC gold. But this, Vettori has put together a decent streak. He gave Adesanya some problems early early on in Adesanya's UFC run. He was sort of the Raquel Pennington to Adesanya's Holly Holm. It's going to be I think people are going to love that analogy. But you know what I mean?
I like it.
He gave him a tough, rugged fight early on in his UFC run, and then some people are like, ooh, is he really going to be all that good?
Mm-hmm. And like Holm Pennington, it sucked. That's what you're saying, right?
At least Holden Pennington 1 was better than its absolutely dismal rematch would be. God, I hope that's not going to be the case. No, it was a decent fight.
No, it was a good fight, yes.
It showed us a lot of the strengths and weaknesses of both men. And I think Vettori is perhaps getting a little underplayed. Mm-hmm. He's not the prettiest fighter in the world, but it wouldn't be the first time that there's been a dynamic, exciting striker at the top of the division and a low-resolution King's MMA product has kind of rolled up on the end of a streak and taken it away from them.
Yeah.
Just because Vettori isn't the most exciting fighter in the world and has a notably low polygon count.
Yeah.
Isn't necessarily a reason to take away from the fact that he has many things which are in his favor. Like, he is a decent grappler and striker, and more than this, he is a southpaw, and he is incredibly durable.
Yeah, and also
just keeps going.
If you noticed the shirt that Vettori was winning during the very interesting and not at all awkward segment they filmed with him and Adesanya talking trash to each other at the last event, I think they may have patched his graphics. There were some, not on the face really, but there was some dense, there was a dense texture on the shirt he was wearing for sure. So. Yeah,
the face is always the hardest one to fix.
It's really just tough to get it looking realistic. It's the upper lip. That's the really tough part. When he looks pretty good, but when he talks, you're like, something's not right with this guy.
Yeah, it's just don't buy it.
So, yes, immortally tough. I think that is the most important thing. Honestly, it's instrumental in every Vettori fight, namely because Vettori has really poor defense. He just kind of jerks his head straight back sometimes. Other times he gets hit with it just being straight up. He will sort of swat at punches with his hands, but that's always unreliable as an only layer of defense. Easy to bait out those hand movements and then find a way into the chin that is, completely immobile behind that guard. But very, very durable. And he has counted on it to good success, including in their first fight, which we were saying before, it sort of reminds you of the tactics that Robert Whittaker was going for in his fight with Adesanya, albeit with a much bigger cushion provided by that durability. Vettori had success against Adesanya in sort of lengthening the exchanges, adding layers, particularly following Adesanya out of the pocket with his jab. All the things we talked about Adesanya doing when we were previewing the Whittaker fight were absolutely, we picked up on a lot of those openings because of what Vettori did. Adesanya will slip and roll, do these really slick moves, and then he'll be completely, utterly out of position to do anything with it, if you make him do like 2 or 3 defensive moves in a row. And, Vettori was able to follow him out of the pocket with those jabs in particular. Also with kicks. Would love to see Vettori do more of that, getting Adesanya moving and then firing a kick as he's retreating. Body kicks in particular would seem to work really well, as a southpaw. And, I think that it's sort of, he can have success in the other ways that Whittaker was having success. For example, the counter punching. It's not good, the counter punching per se. I mean, it's not preceded by good defense anyway. That goes without saying. But because of that complete physical immortality, Vettori is able to, he's one of the few people I think in this division who can take clean shots from Adesanya and fire back. He can literally take his chin getting touched, and treat that as a trigger to counter. And he did have some success against Adesanya in that way as well. Adesanya tends to really commit and sort of, I think that the thing is Adesanya's defense is almost totally reactive. Everything that isn't distance, that is. When he's at distance, he's got the cushion of space. He will move and change angles. Once he's in the pocket, he tends to throw and then kind of wait. He's not necessarily like taking a picture and freezing, waiting to get hit, but he is waiting for the guy to try to hit him, and that's when he will add further layers. And if you can just have immediate counters, you can catch him. You can surprise him with unexpected comeback strikes in those moments. And Vettori had success there as well. And then there was, of course, the wrestling. So, I think you're right. It's, don't underplay Vettori too much. He can't be killed, or hasn't been killed yet. He doesn't tend to get tired, and he presents a threat, albeit not really much of a finishing one at all, but still a constant threat in every layer of the striking and in every phase. So, there's something to him as a challenge to Adesanya, I think.
Yeah. I think the problem with, the Whittaker comparison is obviously what he has in durability, he trades off in kind of speed and mechanics.
Yes.
Because there were many times when he could force Adesanya back into compromised positions and then couldn't hit him because, he couldn't do a Silver Weidman, for example, because whilst Weidman is quite foot slow, he also has really long arms.
Yeah.
And he couldn't, burst after him like a Whittaker might be able to, because he's quite slow. But his combination of being slow and short-armed does kind of work against him. One of the things you mentioned, this is the body kicks, and I would also genuinely be interested to see if, I'm sure we're not going to see it, Vettori can fake his right hand into body punches. Because obviously, Adesanya, big leaner, and just a big tall guy. But, in a similar way to sort of John Jones, when people first discussed him fighting Shogun, and people were like, oh, this guy might not be that good against low kicks. And then he basically made it through an entire career and out the other end. Without ever fighting a concerted low kick attack. There's a distinct chance that no one will ever try and punch Adesanya in the body.
Yes.
will literally just be something that we'll never ever see.
Yes. Yeah, it's there. Anytime anyone's taller than you, hit their body. Anytime anybody relies heavily on head movement, especially like big leaning movements, hit their body. Anytime you're fighting another human being with 4 limbs or fewer, hit their body.
And you would think he's a short, immortal guy.
Yeah.
With great pace.
Yeah.
And he's a headhunter apart from the King's body kick, because he's presumably reluctantly been taught that one.
It really, Cordero had to fight hard to really install that one into the Vittori process. Yeah.
So one of the things I was thinking is, which one of these guys do you think has actually improved more since their first fight?
That's a good question. I think I would have very confidently said Adesanya. I'm a little less certain of that now. I think I'm still in the process of like sort of figuring out what all this means. You know, it took me like quite a while of seeing Robert Whittaker run into sort of problems before I kind of felt like I was able to write not the book, but a book on him. You know, I would have said Adesanya, like, you just look in a very general sort of distant sense, and you have his first 2 UFC fights. Rob Wilkinson takes him down more than once. That's embarrassing. Second fight, he stops Vittori, a better wrestler than Wilkinson, certainly, from taking him down until the 3rd round. So that looks like some improvement. And then we finally get to, like, you know, the Blachowicz fight, where he's just getting taken down with, like, very straightforward setups. I think a lot of it probably has to do with, this is my guess, sort of, is how comfortable Adesanya is at distance, how comfortable he is with his reads. We know Adesanya likes to get a few pictures of his opponent before he can really execute confidently. But, I don't know. Has Vittori improved at all? I think is the pertinent question before I pick one or the other, right? Is Vittori different from how he was when he fought Adesanya the first time?
I mean, it's hard to say, because Adesanya is such a unique proposition.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he is. I think, apart from everything else, one of the narratives about the Vittori fight was when he fought Adesanya is Marvin Vittori actually a pressure fighter? Mm-hmm. I think he has become more of that. I think he is in general, like a cleaner combination puncher. He still has, like, his defense hasn't improved at all.
Yeah.
He's still just a bit of a flaily dude.
Yeah.
Just like on defense when he's throwing, there's just this kind of wide-eyed tension about him that somehow doesn't communicate to a loss in cardio at all.
He does a sort of bow and arrow movement with a lot of his punches. Like, one arm goes out and the other one has to, like, retract all the way behind his back. I don't really know why. Tense, I guess, is the idea.
And I guess, you know, he had, you know, again, like, it's hard to find benchmarks. I mean, Kevin Holland is his most concerted and consistent wrestling performance, but it's Kevin Holland.
Right. It was sort of like, if you didn't go in there with a wrestling game plan, do you have a brain? Like, what are you doing not to just take this guy down and hold him down? It's a title.
Also, like, having success with it does not mean you're a good wrestler.
No, not at all. 11 takedowns for Vittori in that fight. That is more than he has gotten in any other fight by a factor of almost 4. The most in any other fight being against Vitor Miranda, in which he got 3. Also not exactly a paragon of defensive wrestling. So, yeah, I think you're right with the pressure. Sorry, just a quick word. I do think sort of just I don't know if it's a technical thing so much as it is an awareness of cage cutting. That was an issue for him against Adesanya the first time. He did a lot of following until the 3rd round, when I think Adesanya maybe had slowed a tiny bit, or Vettori just had a fire lit under his ass by a very energized Cordero in the corner, and then he got in Adesanya's face and was able to stay on top of him a lot more consistently, at least for the first 2 minutes of that round. I do think the cage cutting has improved, and that could be a really big help. I mean, Vettori is, if you think about it, physically, the durability, he's probably one of the few guys in this division who can spend 5 rounds capitalizing on the pressure vulnerabilities we have long seen in Adesanya's game. As we learned in the Whittaker fight, you got to be really careful if you're going to try to pressure Adesanya for 5 rounds in dealing with those counters. Vettori basically doesn't have to be careful. So if he can cut off the cage more, if he can stay on top of Adesanya, who's to say he will not create the same wrestling openings Jan Blachowicz created in rounds 4 and 5, or Vettori himself created in round 3 in the first fight?
Okay, the other thing is Adesanya sitting down on his punches more as he becomes more confident in as he's become more confident in the cage. Obviously, he went from an attrition finisher to being just a lights out finisher.
Did he?
Can Vettori just take Adesanya's punches?
Well, did he? I mean, we have the Whittaker finish. There's no other lights out
Costa
finish.
Was
okay, yeah.
But also just when he was low kicking Romero, Romero was very visibly damaged by that, even if the fight was terrible and most of us, Romero might well have won it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Maybe not. I mean, no one's chin is immortal. We're certainly going to have another chance to talk about that idea with the Figueretto-Moreno rematch.
Mm-hmm.
That, you can't just always expect to take the shots because you were able to previously. It doesn't even have to be a degradation. Sometimes just the right shot lands at the right moment. But, I don't know. I'm still inclined to count on Vettori's durability. You noted before the show we saw him hurt worse than ever against Kevin Holland. I think Kevin Holland, not only do I think he has respectable power, but he was really desperately trying to take Vettori's head off in the brief moments he got on the feet in that fight, and it's still not as if he had Vettori on the verge of going out. He just stung him, and then got, taken down. So, I'm still going to count on Vettori's chin. Here's my final question to you. Do you think we see a sitting down on punches performance from Adesanya? Is there any reaction to the Blachowicz fight? Is that just opponent specific? Or do we see him trying to engage more in long range? He did have a lot of early success out-kicking Vettori in their first fight, although Vettori is actually better than most middleweights, I would say, at checking, and he did adjust and basically take the kicks out of Adesanya's game by round 3. Do you think we see the same kind of approach from Israel? Do you think we see him sitting down in the pocket and trying to counterpunch?
I think we see him go for the same, pretty much the same approach we saw before. I don't think the low kick game is just as unavailable as it was against Costa,
right?
Or even to some extent to Romero, because Vettori is constantly trying to step inside, and he did actually do as you mentioned before the show, he did a better job of defending the low kicks as the fight went on. He started to check them. It's pretty easy to check an inside low kick in open stance, and Adesanya's low kicks basically disappeared. I mean, I think the thing that Adesanya should get a lot of deserved credit for is that he just kept, against Vettori, he did keep running his jab.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's probably the crux of this fight for me.
Yeah.
I still don't see why Adesanya can't just jab Vettori up. and I don't know what part of Vittori's arsenal he uses to close in past it. He's not a great level change guy. Again, he's not going to punch the body. He can feint in behind his own jab and jab with Adesanya, but he's at a massive reach and power and accuracy disparity.
Yep, 6 inches less of reach, to be specific.
So, and, I would be tempted to think that he could, outlast Adesanya. He had his best round in the 3rd round, as he did last time. But Adesanya wasn't really that tired in that round.
No, there's also, I think it's too easy to forget the fact that Adesanya had essentially taken the fight back over in the back half of round 3.
Yeah, exactly. Once he got back to his feet, he seemed fine. He wasn't like, oh my god, I've been on my back.
Yeah, and the other thing is he took a cue, right? This might be influenced by, Vittori's pressuring, but at a certain point, Vittori does have to, step back and reassess and, protect himself if he is just getting hit over and over again. Adesanya's adjustment to the heavy uptick in pressure from Vittori in that round was then, once he got back up, to start pressuring himself. He started advancing behind his jab and setting up shots and just trying to sneak straight punches right down the middle. That backed Vittori off. I don't think Vittori, the lack of defense, it will hold you back. Even if you're insanely tough, even if you are known as a relentless pressure fighter, you can't just run into ramrod jabs over and over again and keep coming forward. You'll get knocked out or you will take a cue and step back. And I think Adesanya can still do that. I think you're right. It comes down to the jab. What I would like to see, Phil, is, and I will be saying this as well in the next fight we talk about, I would love to see Adesanya be satisfied with the jab. That is something I'm a little worried about. I think it's less of a concern here than against Blachowicz, because he can just kind of land it whenever he wants. The opening will persistently be there. So I'm sure he'll take it. But this is a perfect opportunity. You have an insanely durable guy who's going to be there for 5 rounds, not slowing down. Just be satisfied landing jabs and making him chase you, turning him and jabbing him in the face. And I don't know. I think this might get spicy for Adesanya, sort of at his own behest, because he's going to want to build off of that in ways that will create exchanges with Vittori. Either way, I do think Adesanya has more flexibility of movement. He's in a lot less danger when being pushed backwards than Vittori is when the same is happening. And he's just as capable of coming forward when he needs to. Reach, accuracy, hand speed, all those things are beneficial in that regard. And he can land jabs whenever he wants. So, how do you not pick him? Also, you got to assume he must have been working on his wrestling, right? Vittori's last fight, Adesanya's last fight, their first fight. Surely Adesanya has really, really focused on quick wrestling reversals and escapes.
Yep.
Cool. Anything to add? You're picking Adesanya too, I assume?
Yeah, I got to. Am I going to pick Vittori's chin to hold up? I think I will.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'll pick his chin to hold up, and he might put a scare into Adesanya. I think over 5 rounds. There's probably a good chance he does at some point.
Yeah, I agree.
Unless he's just getting, unless, as we said, Adesanya is really just sitting down on his shots more, and because Vittori got hit a ton, I think I'll pick that Adesanya by decision.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just I don't know where I would expect Vittori to get it done. I don't know how he consistently gets in. So yeah.
Yeah. Maybe getting in on takedowns and then following up. It's something Cordero was yelling at him to do in the first fight. Maybe that means he'll have worked on it. Like Frankie Edgar style, very directly using the takedowns as openings for strikes, creating messy scrambles and exchanges. There are ways, but I think we're looking at another competitive all throughout, but pretty clear by the end of the fight. Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, Deiveson Figueretto versus Brandon Moreno, the Assassin Baby 2. Another, same shit, but very, very happy to see this one, even more than I am to see Adesanya Vettori 2, which I have to admit I think I'm even more interested in now that we've discussed it. We'll get to that and more after this. Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out, the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right, then welcome back to Heavy Hands. We are moving on to the co-main event. I gotta say, even though this is, as we said at the top of the show, in a similar mold to Adesanya Vettori, in that the first fight was certainly competitive. Both guys had moments repeatedly throughout. It was very clear that Deiveson Figueretto won, even with a much-deserved point deduction for one of the most savagely deliberate-looking low shots I've ever seen. Truly a flyweight Romero moment, and not the only one. Despite that, I'm very excited because that fight was insane. Vettori Adesanya one was good. Quite good even. But, we both rewatched Figueretto Moreno now, Phil. It's just really fucking good. It's such a great fight. I'm very excited to see it again, even if it plays out in exactly the same fashion. And the chance that something different might happen, something different at all, is in itself extremely exciting to me. Unless that something is Deiveson Figueretto getting a first-round knockout. I don't care to see that.
If it's Brandon Moreno getting a first-round knockout.
Yes, good. That's sort of like it will feel like I've been cheated of something, but in the same way that, like, Demetrius Johnson knocking out Joe Benavidez felt that I was cheated of a
You're picking
rematch.
the physically gifted fighter to defeat the gritty hard worker. You'd be happy with that.
Yeah, Brandon Moreno's many physical gifts, including his, indestructible chin.
Yes, his indestructible chin.
The fact that about 80 of his 125-pound frame is made up of balls. That's certainly a physical gift. And as we know, Deiveson Figueretto, classic blue-collar fighter.
Yep.
The real lunch pail athlete.
I was saying before we started recording.
Yeah.
He's the mentally tough one of the two of them.
Why do you say that? Explain this joke.
Because he tried in the 5th round.
He did.
Moreno was just like, well, I had a good fight. Might as well just Chad Mendes it. Be happy with, having competed. And Figueretto was like, no, I am going to win. And he did. And it's also notable that throughout the fight, Figueretto is the one who is visibly hitting Moreno harder. Just vile, disgusting impacts.
Yeah.
Figueretto is the one who actually got hurt worse.
Yeah. That's insane, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. Brandon Moreno is a weak-willed cheater compared to the honest man, Deiveson Figueretto.
Yeah, and the weird thing is the only time that Moreno is hurt is like a superficial injury when he gets hit in the eye. That's
also when his balls are cracked.
Well, which I would never call that superficial. Truly an absolutely savage, like a front kick, ball of the foot, hardest part of the body after the heel, directly to the dick. the man almost threw up in the cage, demonstrating his lack of mental toughness. But, yeah, that is weird. That Moreno's durability, like, Figueretto is insanely durable, Phil. He's so durable. He completely relies on his chin more than Moreno does. By a big margin. Moreno's defense was also very impressive in this fight. And yet, despite Figueretto landing plenty and landing huge power shots and having by far the heavier hands, it's Figueretto who actually seems to get, like, stunned. Possibly in round 2, I think, when Moreno chases him with a head kick and he's, like, badly out of position, as he usually is when you put him on the back foot, and is, like, falling into the cage and gets hit in the side of the head. And then in round 4, when he gets beamed with a big overhand on the ground, and then gets back up and starts getting drilled with hooks also against the fence. Okay, so, durability aside, both men insanely durable. Figueretto has more power, but it almost seems like it doesn't matter, because Brandon Moreno can just tank everything that he can't avoid otherwise. I think the question to ask is the one that you asked me before we started, Phil. Let's have a discussion of what we saw in the first fight, and what we would like to see done differently, where these two men could improve, how they might be able to sort of change the shape of what was otherwise like a pretty damn even fight that was basically just decided by the fact that Figueretto hit way harder.
So I think the main thing about this fight, the key factor of it is as we say in many of these things, it was the directionality. And what allowed Figueretto the relatively comfortable lead that he did. I think, we, as most people, I think, did. I think we both scored this 48-46.
Yep, 4 rounds with a point deduction.
Was the fact that Moreno spent the entire time fighting with his back against the cage, trying to counterpunch Figueretto. Or at least the early going.
Way too much is the point.
What's that?
Way too much, anyway. I mean, he didn't spend the entire time, certainly, but he spent far too much time with his back to the fence trying to counter.
Yeah, I think the early going of this fight specifically shows what Figueretto's best win condition is. Because there's two things. There's the fact that Moreno is backed up against the cage a lot, and there's the fact that Figueretto is leaning on his left hand a lot.
Yes.
He's jabbing with Moreno when he can. He's not leaping in. He's not throwing large hooks unless he's sure Moreno is on the retreat.
And a lot of sorry, go on.
Just staying poised till he knows he has an opportunity. And Moreno, meanwhile, is just, as mentioned, like looking to counterpunch, but he's looking to counterpunch against someone that he clearly expects to be much wilder than he actually is. I think this is Figueretto's like biggest condition, and I think thing that he needs to stick to is jabbing with Moreno. Because I think he got away from this as the fight went on, and he was just like, I just need to beam this guy as hard as I can, and ends up losing his balance and sometimes getting taken down, or sometimes getting on his, or like sometimes just walking into big shots.
Well, you have to understand, Phil, when you are as blue collar and ungifted as Davis and Figueretto, it just gets boring doing the same thing over and over and over again. It's just like being at work.
I think he was just saying to himself, nothing I'm doing is working on this immortally durable cheetah.
Yeah.
I need to throw everything at him. My family is depending on me.
Davis and Figueretto, what's especially terrible about this irony, Phil? Is that, like, Davis Figueretto does seem like a very earnest, hard-working man.
No, he is.
Yeah, but he is also the athletic cheater. I mean, I'm gonna drop the pretense. You can hold on to your shield of irony and say that I'm, like, lying or whatever, that's fine. Just so that I can say, I do think he just gets bored of doing fundamentals.
Yes.
Like, he landed such powerful, lancing jabs on Brandon Moreno. Jabbing with him, as you said, was so effective for Figueretto. There were a lot of moments where he seemed to be quite consciously playing on Moreno's expectations of big, wild swings. He would come in like that, that like Rocky Marciano pose, like right shoulder fully cocked back, weight completely on the right foot, leaning over the right leg, clearly indicating a big winging right hand, and then just smash Moreno with a jab, after giving him like a second to absorb that look. He did that several times. It was very effective. And what I was going to say before was that, you're right. He wasn't reckless early. The first 2 rounds of this fight are exceptional for Davis and Figueretto. I would say the first round and a half, but he pretty clearly wins the first 2 rounds, despite what DC says on the commentary. He thinks Brandon Moreno won round 2 with the takedowns.
What does he do with those takedowns again?
He gets escaped from.
Yeah, and he gets elbowed in the face a couple of times.
Yeah, that too. He gets elbowed in the face and then like softly embarrassed by one of the best scramblers in the sport. But yeah, what I was going to say is that Figueretto really like relegated his really committed hooking swings to body shots, which is another thing he could really do in this fight. Just be satisfied with jabs to the face and big shots to the body. Those were tremendously effective. But I think he just gets bored. You know, he wants to throw big bombs, and I think he doesn't like the fact that Moreno just takes the shots and immediately fires back every time. I think he wants to teach him a lesson. And we'll see if that has changed, if he has internalized that Moreno will not be taught any lessons, and has just been immortally tough his entire MMA career. So for Moreno, obviously keep the back off the cage. As you said, I agree with you. Directionality, generalship, positioning, however you want to refer to it, that's a big deal. Moreno needs to keep his back off the cage. I think more than that, I would love to see Moreno push forward. Something he did essentially none of. I think
if he has immortal durability, he should be willing to spend it more. I mean, this is being incredibly harsh of someone who put on an insanely gutsy performance.
Yeah.
But, the way you get Davis and Figueretto to commit to insane punches is to exchange with him.
Yes.
You have to initiate the exchange. You have to be first. You are even if Figueretto is the fast, powerful puncher, Moreno can just open him up with throwaway jabs.
Yep.
He kept trying a lot to open Figueretto up with feints.
Yeah.
Wasn't happening a lot. Figueretto wasn't biting on feints to try and counter them.
Yes.
It did sometimes dull Figueretto's responses. Like, there was one point where Moreno was able to feint the jab several times and then just leap in and crack Figueretto with a right hand.
Mm-hmm. There are also moments where he gets him frozen and then just lights him up with a 3-punch combination. No head movement. All 3 punches land on the head in sequence. But I
think it was dulling his reactions as to what was going to come at him, which was good. Mm-hmm. But it was not making him throw, which I think was what Moreno really wanted to happen. Yeah. He has to throw. He doesn't have to put a lot of steam on it, but he has to throw and he has to be first.
Well, and you don't have to, the counters, which, Moreno has developed some really nice counterpunching, those do not have to be, and I would say should not be, the crux of how to beat Figueretto. Just hit him. Mm-hmm. Especially if he's ignoring the feints. Like, we've said this so many times on this show, but what do you do when you feint and you get a reaction out of somebody is you exploit that reaction, and them not reacting is a reaction. You can still exploit it. You should just hit them. It's Davis and Figueretto who acts like the durable fighter. Right? It's Davis and Figueretto who will walk forward, not moving his head, ignoring the feints, just believing that he can tank whatever hits him. And that's a great opportunity as the, arguably quicker-handed fighter, or at least the, quicker-handed stylist.
I think it's simply the fact that he puts less on his punches, at least in the early, at least on his first shot.
Yeah, he's a more relaxed puncher, in general. You should just be sending those shots in there. I 100% agree. Take the initiative. This is another thing. It is a complete hobby horse for me at this point, but I'm going to keep talking about it until I see it. Because we have generally seen many aspects of boxing in particular improve by leaps and bounds, really, in MMA, over recent years. This is the next level, is, using the jab to create not punch openings, but positional openings. Using the jab to interrupt the opponent's initiative and then force them to reset so that now suddenly, even if you're not technically going forward, you are leading the dance. There are a few moments in this fight where Moreno does this effectively. I think in round 4, the only round that I think we all agree he really won, Figueretto is probably slowing down a bit, very understandably, because he worked a long shift at the factory. Again, I don't want to join you on this joke, Phil. He does actually work 3 jobs.
I've selected it because it would upset you.
It's very unfair. He's only a cheater in athletic terms, but he really does work his ass off at a bunch of non-MMA jobs. What the hell was I saying? I'm so distracted by your demoralizing jokes. Oh, yes. Figueretto slowed down a bit. But I think a big part of the impression of him slowing down in that round is that Moreno starts to change his tack a bit. He starts to take the initiative. He will just throw in jabs and then turn. Or he'll feint and get Figueretto to just show the beginning of a reaction, then sting him, and then turn. He also does this several times with lead rights. Same idea. Any straight punches, any long-range straight shots, doesn't have to just be the jab. And using that momentary interruption to create an angle, which then you're in charge. Figueretto has to turn and face you. He can't just let you stand at his side and punch him in the cheek. He has to turn, and that is a moment where you are now dictating the direction, the pace, everything. You're dictating the fight for that little moment, and you can build on that. If you're Brandon Moreno, if you're comfortable sitting on the initiative, which he just didn't seem to be in the first fight. So I think even without going forward, he can just make Figueretto turn. I'm not expecting to see this. It's going to be a thing I say there's an opening for all the time, and just rarely see until it finally becomes part of the MMA striker's process. But the opening is there, man, for him to dictate, because I do think, Phil, it's kind of a hard ask saying, oh, push Figueretto backwards.
Yes.
He's like 30 pounds heavier. If he just stands his ground, and he also hits way harder. If he counters, he's going to hit you harder. If he stands his ground and doesn't even throw back, you're going to have a hard time just pushing him over, or bodily pushing him backwards. So what Moreno really needs is a way to not be retreating without having to constantly engage in a physical battle. Although, as you said before, I do agree, there can be a better sort of cost return for that legendary durability he demonstrated in the last fight, if he is willing to create some exchanges. But I think a winning strategy is not just going to be, oh, you should exchange punches with Davis and Figueretto. Everyone's chin is going to fail at some point, even the assassin who is a baby.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. He has to do something to mitigate Figueretto's power. He can't just go toe to toe, much as I've been memeing him a bit.
Yeah.
What's the other thing? Yeah, and Figueretto does, obviously, he has a counter to the jab. which is, basically his own jab. He was actually pretty good at certain points in this fight of just, leaning out of the way of Moreno's jab and then jabbing with him. He was quite difficult to hit in an exchange of jabs. That's why I think he really needs to stay committed to that. But yeah, I mean, I think it's such a fascinating fight. It was a great fight, despite the fact that, we said it wasn't all that close on the scorecards, no matter what they said. I don't know why I can't find myself believing that Moreno could turn it around. I just can't. I don't know why it is. Normally, I'm more willing to see like an underdog path to victory. But I think I've still got to pick. I've still got to pick Figueretto.
Yeah,
and I think it's just the fact that like he won relatively clearly on the scorecards. And I just feel like both of them knew who won that fight at the end of it.
Yeah.
Moreno was just like I think. I mean, right at the end, he just decided he threw caution to the wind and went for it again, and actually again had some success. But I think Figueretto just wanted it more.
I think
and,
I
that
think Moreno
coupled with the physical.
I think
coupled with the actual physical, the obvious physical edge.
Yes,
is just still enough for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think Moreno probably was despondent that he finally seemed to have seized some momentum in round 4, and then Figueretto came out insane in round 5 with a real, like, honestly, early Aldo-esque, like, championship fighter. Like, you will not take this away from me kind of attitude.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm sure, and who knows, different, longer camps, maybe a different Moreno strategy. I think the jab opening is there. Even without that, we could see him building more off of the wrestling success that he had. He really did take Figueretto down a lot. Didn't get shit done. But he did start looking for and coming pretty close on openings, for example, for that really sneaky left high kick he has. In fact, that was consistently a good weapon, because Figueretto's only defense other than leaning back is generally to dip down really heavily over his right leg. And Moreno was catching him there. I think if Moreno comes in
conversely, it was when, in that 5th round, when Figueretto just really started leaning on his own kicks.
Yeah, right.
Like, what would Moreno do if Figueretto just spammed body kicks at him? I remember that was something I was going to say he needed to add in like ages ago. He can just, I think, if he really goes after the kicks early. I mean, because they were saying that, Moreno's arms might have been hurt by the kicks. Apparently, it wasn't true. I mean, I still think they were hurt by the kicks, if you know what I mean.
Maybe not injured.
They might not have been broken, but those hurt. I think, So jabs and kicks. That's my Figueretto recipe.
Yeah, I agree. Figueretto it is, dropping the shtick once again. Like, he just has massive power and a chin of virtually equal quality. And it would not be the first or even the second time we have seen a fight get hard down the stretch and Figueretto just straight up win it on will. I think that may be a little easier when you're a freak athlete and you have the feeling all the time that you can do anything you put your mind to. But, at the end of the day, it seems likely to become another test of wills, and Figueretto proved that against Pantoja. He proved it the last time against Moreno. He's a very, very hard man to mentally fatigue. He will come back and just straight up smash into you. So, I'm very excited. I want to see Moreno do better. I want to see him leading the dance more. I want to see him capitalizing on those feints, whether or not they get a reaction. I want to see him hitting the body even more than he did. I think that would obviously be a very good idea in trying to slow Figueretto down more. But if it comes down to it and Figueretto just decides he doesn't want to be backed up, he can probably just win exchanges by hitting way harder. So that's it. It should be a thriller. I don't see how it isn't fun again.
Nope.
Could be one of those rematches.
It might be a disappointingly early knockout, but there's no way it's not going to be
violent
thriller for as long as it lasts.
It'll be violent, and that is my only fear. So often the case with these rematches that we just don't get to see enough of it. But whatever we do see will be very entertaining, and I am expecting that Davis and Figueretto will probably walk away from it still the champion. Okay, let's take one more break. When we come back, whatever the hell else is on this card after this. Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. And you can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show. Welcome back to Heavy Hands. We are finally to the people's main event, Phil, the fight everyone was asking for. Leon Edwards is finally taking on a middle-aged Nate Diaz. Do you have any thoughts on this fight?
Yeah. The main one is, how does Leon Edwards come out of this looking good?
That is actually a very interesting question.
Is there a possible path for him to come out of this and look like, and for it to be like a broadly positive experience? Because obviously, I don't want to over-exaggerate. Getting a Nate Diaz fight, particularly Nate Diaz at this stage in his career, is a very positive thing for you, because he gets people looking at him, he gets money, he gets, notoriety and so on. People will basically know who he is in a way which they didn't before.
Yeah.
But in terms of positive outcomes, it's hard to think of many of them, because if he wipes Nate Diaz out, I mean, I guess that's probably it. He just needs to wipe Nate Diaz out.
Yeah.
Which, even as he's gotten older and slower and worse, has not been very difficult to do. I mean, not been very easy to do, and Leon Edwards is not a prolific finisher.
No, that is understating the case, I think.
So, other than that, if he wins by decision,
yeah,
or he uses grappling, both cases he will have cheated.
Yeah.
And
certainly how Nate
God forbid the fight is competitive.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
It really shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be. I still suspect it might be. At least in moments, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. I also suspect there might be a moment. Because there generally is.
Of course.
It's a moment in Nate Diaz fights.
And also in Leon Edwards fights.
Sorry, in Leon Edwards fights. That's what I meant. Sorry.
I think it goes both ways. There's always a moment where Nate starts to work his way in. I mean, well, usually. But Leon Edwards is a real prime candidate for that kind of slow attrition, or that, I don't know, loss of focus. I know the fight site kids, those vaping scooter twerps, they all love Leon Edwards. And he would seem a prime candidate, right, for me to like him. Like, he seems so much like a Rafael Assunção type. I don't like Leon Edwards all that much, Phil. I don't think I've seen him improve in the ways that I really want to see him improve. The three-dimensionality, with the introduction and growth of his wrestling game, that's great. I love seeing strikers, like, not only discover wrestling as like a sort of a trick, but as a genuine part of their game. That's super cool. And when that was first happening, I was fully on board. And I thought, what's going to happen next? With this in his back pocket, Leon's going to get more comfortable as a striker, which is supposed to be the thing he was good at already. I'm not really sold on Leon Edwards as a striker. I think the window is always there to just make him visibly uncomfortable. I think Leon Edwards comes into a fight expecting you to be cowed. Like he really wants to manage the pace of the fight. And if he hits you with a takedown attempt, or if he stings you with a big shot, which are almost always single shots, and if they're not single shots, they're usually 1-2s, then he expects you to slow your roll a bit. And when that doesn't happen, he's always seems like he's kind of on shaky ground. I just think he leaves way too much on the table habitually. Because he has this idea that he can convince people not to come after him. Sometimes you have to make them not come after you. I think the prime example of this, we've talked plenty of times about like the Bryan Barberena fight. Barberena finally works his way into that by the third round. Donald Cerrone.
It's the second round.
Second round, sorry.
I think he loses the third round pretty convincingly.
And that, yeah, actually that happens, that actually seems to happen more than like sort of a slow fade, is that Edwards starts strong and then gets surprised when you're still in the fight and then brings it back in round 3. Cerrone, I think a similar pattern may have happened with Edwards having a good round 5, but letting Cerrone in around rounds 3 or 4. The big one for me is the Albert Tumenov fight, where Edwards is just, he's all over Tumenov in round 1. He hits him with like 2 or 3 takedowns in that round, maybe even just one, and just controls him. You know, cross wrist, a one hook in, pressing him against the cage. Tumenov just cannot build up to save his life. And then Tumenov comes out in round 2, and Edwards has like taken his foot off the gas or lost focus or gotten too comfortable, however you want to explain or analyze it. And Tumenov just gives the initiative to Albert Tumenov, which is a terrible idea. This is a guy with great, clever combination punching who hits really hard, and each time he hits you, he will be aware of several ways to build off of the impact he just had. And will then build a different combination, a different way to come in, and he pretty much wipes Leon Edwards out in round 2. He very comfortably wins round 2 after clearly losing round 1, and he's kind of on his way to winning the fight, until Edwards finally gets another takedown and submits him. And I'm not sure how that fight would have gone out, even if Edwards had controlled him on the ground for the last 2 minutes of round 3. I just feel like that kind of thing seems to happen too often with Leon. You know, like I don't really dislike the man. He seems like a cool guy, I guess. I respect a careful, like, cautious technical style. But like, I don't know. It just seems like a kind of thing where even a really old, out of practice, clearly just seeking money fights, except for now, I guess. I don't know. Nate Diaz can actually work his way into the fight at some point with nothing but Diaz grit. If it were a 5-rounder, would you ever consider picking Nate Diaz?
No.
He's still going to get out wrestled, right?
No, he would get, yeah, I would assume there would be a strong chance he would get stopped.
He's just
like
going to
he did against,
but if he didn't, he still might have, like, out of nowhere, a really good round 4.
Yeah, he might have a good round in him somewhere.
And Leon Edwards
I
cannot keep letting people have randomly good rounds in the middle of fights forever. Someone is going to clip him. Someone is like, there's you should be knocking people out and hurting them. It's fighting, and you have to neutralize threats sometimes. You can't just manage them. Anyway, this is my anti-Leon Edwards rant.
But that's why people like Leon Edwards.
Who?
That's why people like fight type people and so on.
Oh yeah.
Because
people, quote,
I mean,
unquote.
I think he has just like he has an aspirational style. It's why people love Jose Aldo so much as well. It's that he's fighting because both of them are fighting for fighting as though MMA is a
like a real sport,
a super clean like technical sport.
Yeah.
And they're clearly not really going to give up on that. But yeah, I think the main problem is that Edwards is like not a particularly large or powerful welterweight, meaning that is because he doesn't have like the nuts and bolts of his game aren't dissimilar to those of Kamaru Usman, and particularly in the way that Kamaru Usman has evolved. They've sort of come towards each other. We've mentioned this before. Over time, they're both like upright 1-2 strikers who use the clinch to protect themselves and are really good wrestlers. Like the horsepower differential is pretty massive, which means that whilst Edwards is the probably the better, more schooled striker, he's also shorter, has less reach, and hits less hard.
Is he?
As you mentioned, means that he can go for things like 1-2s, and someone like Brian Barberena can just leap into it and crack him in the face.
Yeah. Is he a more schooled striker, though? I feel that at this point, Kamaru Usman has surpassed him. I think Usman's more comfortable in the pocket. He has a wider variety. He has a more creative shot selection.
Oh, I think Kamaru Usman is as I said, bigger, more powerful.
Yeah.
Like he has a lot more leeway to be a effective striker. Kamaru Usman still gets hit clean in the face way more than Leon Edwards ever does.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
He's more offensively potent, but that's because he can be.
Yeah, that's true. So,
but all this said, he's gonna chew Nate Diaz the fuck up. How is Nate Diaz gonna
hold on
consistently win this fight?
Hold on, Phil, because that was a question you opened the segment with. Is he gonna tune him up?
He's gonna win like tons of the fight, and then he's
definitely gonna win.
He's gonna get clipped by a right hook at some point, and people will panic and they'll get into a scramble, and then he'll get out of it, and then he'll win a decision, and Nate Diaz will be streaming blood because he'll have been elbowed in the head like 20 times, and Nate Diaz fans will point to the fact that he hit him once and hurt him, and they'll be like, he would have won if this one weird thing didn't happen.
Yeah,
that is my considered prediction for the fight.
That sounds pretty accurate. I gotta be honest. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like for a prediction, he can just out wrestle Nate. So like, even if shit starts to go wrong on the feet, we have seen Nate. I don't know. I watched like the Ben Henderson fight. Holy shit! Like Ben just takes him down. He just takes him down however he wants, and because he's faster, he just mixes that up with like interruptive counters. And Nate is completely lost. I know Nate has improved in ways since then. Certainly his boxing defense. But yeah, like, Leon has a great body lock takedown game. That works fine against Nate. Like, what's he gonna do? He's gonna do his little, like, his counter double underhook hip toss that, like, creates a scramble but never really leads to a good position. Edwards also has a strong double. He can hit a variety of trips from the clinch, and he can smash you with elbows on the breaks. Almost certainly the best part of Edwards' game is how consistently effective he is at striking on breaks. So yeah, Nate's gonna get carved up. I would just go for it, Leon. Like, this is the time. You don't even have to do it as like a regular thing. Just take this one opportunity to fucking dust somebody. Please, buddy. I'm rooting for Leon, That's why I'm critiquing him. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. I want to see you succeed and flourish. So, I like Nate Diaz too, but wipe his ass out. Just take him out.
I think the other parallel, as well as the Benson Henderson fight, it's obviously Jorge Masvidal.
Yeah.
And, as we sort of said was going to happen, Nate looked sad and old in that fight.
He did.
Jorge buzzsawed him in the clinch and took him down and outgrappled him and basically beat him everywhere. And he just looked old. I mean, he still had his moments where he, clipped Masvidal with the 1-2.
Mm-hmm.
And Masvidal, I think, still does have a better chin than Leon Edwards. But I'm just curious to see, does Leon Edwards even bother with Diaz specific game plans? He really should.
Yeah.
Is he going to low kick him much? He could do that.
He doesn't typically.
Yeah.
But it will be a great opportunity to the game plan's there to put a stamp on a fight. If you're fighting a Diaz, just do these 3 things. And have a field day. You'll look really good. You'll look as good as RDA did when he beat Nate Diaz. Yeah, we'll see. I'm rooting for you, Leon, and that's why I'm yelling at you. I want to see you do it big time. Big time styly. Okay. That's it. And I guess, you just probably heard the end of a bonus episode. But that's also it for, this week's main show. So find us on social media at Boxing Bush, BUSCH. That's me. At Evil Greg Jackson. That's Phil. You like that, Phil? I did it in reverse order by mistake. Anything to plug?
No, not this week. Well, actually, obviously, we will be. What am I saying? I will be breaking down the main and the co-main with David.
That's
so
right.
We'll be writing about both of those.
Yes, to honestly sort of stealth. Well, no. Remember, Figueretto Moreno is not stealth exciting. I think Adesanya Vettori is a stealth exciting matchup, actually. I think there is really something there. So yeah, make sure you check out Phil's toe-to-toe previews. I don't think I've got anything coming out this week, but I should be well and settled in to watch the card after my move. So I think I'm going to try my very damnedest to put out an article next week, provided something interesting happens, which I'm pretty damn sure it will. So thank you all for listening to Heavy Hands. Check out the Patreon. We got a couple of bonus discussions from this week's show that did not fit in this main episode. Just a short bonus ep, but go over there where you can also hear, or watch rather, Marvin Hagler versus Benny Briscoe, and Marvin Hagler versus Tony Sibson, arguably his finest, most dominant performance. Kyle McLaughlin, formerly of the Fight Site, formerly of Combat Sports, joined me to talk about those and just gush about how much we love Marvin Hagler. And hopefully more stuff like that will be coming to the Patreon in the very near future. So we'll see you over there. $3 a month, all that. That's it. Thank you all so much for listening. Hope you enjoyed the show. If you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands.